Well, hi there, everybody. Well, it's been a while since we've done a podcast on grief. Well, I shouldn't say it's been a while. I've put out a few videos here and there, but don't do quite as many as I used to because, well, life has changed for me a lot. But this particular video, you may have been attracted to it because of the title, talking about the 5-year anniversary of being widowed. And while, yes, I did meet somebody in the last year and am now happily married, I'll always be a widow, though, because I did indeed lose the first love of my life. That, of course, being Pam. Met in high school. You guys and girls who've watched the videos over the years know the story. We were together over 30 years and lived all over the country and had a great life. So, how is it 5 years later? Well, maybe the better starting point is to go back through the years and kind of recount for you how they are. First of all, year number one, and I did some videos on this, was an absolute living hell. Uh, Not going to sugarcoat it. It was just incredibly terrible. It was awful. It was hard to get through, but I managed to keep moving forward, putting one foot in front of the other. Very, very hard. I continued, of course, working in local television. You may remember me talking about that. I stayed in it through COVID in that first year. In 2020, I lost Pam in the fall of 2019. So 2020, with the COVID pandemic taking place and then going through the loss of her and living in the Pacific Northwest, it was kind of tough. And working in television as a weather guy at a local television station, every night, of course, the news in those days was doom and gloom and more doom and gloom. So all that piled on top of me made that first year incredibly, very, very difficult. Year two, though, I made a move. I got out of television. Yes, I had loved working in television my entire life and thought I would continue to work in it, maybe another 5 to 10 years. But after going through the pandemic and the loss and such, I said, I've got to get in a more positive state of mind, a more positive surrounding, so to speak. So I went back to Tennessee. Hadn't been there in years and years, to Nashville. Ended up getting a really terrific job with a Christian-based organization. And that's where I'm still employed now. And that's when things started to turn around a little bit. But I will tell you, year two was also incredibly hard too, because in year two, the reality sets in. I always say the first year of grief after losing the one you love so much is kind of the shock and awe period. You're still kind of in disbelief that this really happened, and maybe they're still going to walk back through the door, but it never happens. And in year two, it becomes reality. Then as we moved forward into year three, I relocated to Phoenix, Arizona. I felt that I needed to be somewhere that was bright and sunny all the time, and we had always talked about living there, and it proved to be one of the best moves of my life. It was at the right time and at the right place, and it was delightful there for years 3 and 4, and the latter half of year two as well. I found myself, that is, outdoors all the time, soaking in the sunshine, no matter how hot, and of course didn't have to worry about a lot of cold weather in Phoenix, and I liked that a lot. Now, of course, I still struggled with not having my soulmate with me, but I continued to put myself out there. No, I'm not talking about the dating scene or anything like that, but I continued to stay active as I always did throughout my grief journey. I did a lot of hiking. I would still go to ball games. I would still make trips and things like that. Was it hard? You bet it was, but I did continue to get through it. As I continued to talk with other widows and widowers over time, I discovered that they would always tell me it does slowly, ever so slowly get better. And of course, if you're in those early years, you're like, no, I don't think so. They're just saying that. But I can say it's kind of like, I've told this story so many times. It's like the ball player that told me who injured his knee. He said, you injure the knee, the pain is awful, but eventually you get rehab and you get back on the field, you get back in the game. But he says you never forget the injury. And that's kind of what grief is like. We kind of have to go through our own rehabilitation. So in year 4 of grief, I started putting myself out there a little bit more, maybe thinking, well, maybe I could find a friend, somebody to spend some time with. And that's when I met Nicole, a beautiful young woman from the country of Kenya. Met her in church. Started out just being hiking buddies, and it was nice to have somebody to do things with again, to do some hiking, to go to a ball game, to do some shopping, or just whatever. And of course that then blossomed And as we headed into year 5, we became man and wife. So now here on this 5-year anniversary, how are things? Well, I'm going to tell you, first of all, I've often told people, they used to in the first couple of years, a lot of people would want to call me on the anniversary date of when Pam passed. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. That's a date that I don't like to remember. In fact, this year, 5 years later, I had it in my mind because I don't focus on that day. I try and focus on all the other good days of life that we had together. Not that one day when God called her to heaven. When I lost her, I kind of blanked that out. I don't like to remember that day. And this year, on the 5-year mark, I actually struggled with what actually was the date. Was it the 19th? Was it the 20th? The 21st? And I kind of saw that too as a turning point, that I couldn't really quite remember that date. And you know how I finally remembered it for sure? Well, you may have heard, I ended up writing a book with the help of Nicole called Year 1 of Grief. I went and I pulled a copy of my book out. And of course, the first day in the Year of Grief book is the day I lost Pam, and I read it October 20th, 2019. So there I knew the date. But the bottom line is, here we are on that very day, 5 years later. And how does life look? It's different. It's a lot different. Do I still miss Pam? Oh, of course I do. But I do have new love in my life, and that's been beautiful. But what's been beautiful about it too is that Nicole recognizes the fact that Pam is and always will have a portion of my heart. What I've learned is I can share this heart still. I always felt like I was probably too young to give up, and there were times though I wanted to, and I'm glad I didn't. Because now, you know, we ended up moving to a different part of the country after Phoenix. Got back closer to some family members, my kids and relatives and things like that. And we actually even bought a house, something I never would have dreamed of doing 5 years ago. I mean, if you'd told me that 5 years ago, if you had told me I would be married and living in a new home and back in the southeastern part of the United States, I would say you're out of your mind. But again, that's how things can change over time, but it's a slow process and you can't rush it. It's like making a really good dinner. You can't rush it, because if you do, then it just doesn't quite taste right. Well, life now, the flavor of life tastes pretty good. Now, it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. It's not. But boy, it's way, way better. And it doesn't mean you got to meet somebody. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that over time, it does get better. And many of you will decide to go it alone the rest of your life. And I totally get that. I had pretty well decided that too, but God had other plans. And now the big difference is 5 years later, I'm doing something that I used to do with Pam. I now actually think about the future and plan towards the future. In those first few years of grief, I never thought about the future. All I did was dwell in the past. I dwelled in my grief. And that's all part of the grieving process. Nothing wrong with that. Now, again, I still have my moments, but boy, they are few and far between. Bottom line being, I actually had an older gentleman tell a friend of mine who she had been widowed fairly young, him too. And she asked him, she says, when do you think it gets better? Does it ever get better? And oddly enough, he said, you know, in about 4 or 5 years, he says, you start to make the turn. Slowly you make the turn, and it does get a little better. And I wouldn't have believed it until it happened to me. Now, it may not be for everyone, though. You know, I know that. And I know there's some of you that will watch this video, and you'll hear about me making the turn and things being better, and it kind of makes you angry. It's like, no, you shouldn't get better. You shouldn't be happier. This, that. And I get that. I truly, truly do. I used to feel that way at times as well. Seeing other couples and things and dates and such, you know, it would just make you angry. So I get that. It's okay if my life may make you uncomfortable now. And you may be thinking, no, I don't want that. But what I can tell you, at least from my firsthand experience, that year in 4 and 5, at least for me, started making the turn. And I have no idea what the future holds. But I've got hope. I've got hope. And that's a good feeling It's a really, really good feeling. It's nice to enjoy life again and get out on a beautiful day like today as well. That's about it. Nothing earth-breaking, nothing, you know, I don't know. Hopefully I helped you a little bit. Maybe I gave you a little bit of hope as well. I know I always enjoyed seeing some hopeful videos from time to time, so that's what I wanted to put out here for you as well. Keep watching, keep subscribing, share it. If you're watching on YouTube, give it the thumbs up. If you're on the actual podcast, leave a review. We'd appreciate that. Also, check out the book, Year One of Grief. You can get that on Amazon, and again, there too, reviews are greatly appreciated. See you guys and girls. Have a great day. Better yet, a better tomorrow. Bye now.